Canada or Malaysia?
Currently, I would say Malaysia.
Is it because of the food?
Yes,
Just some
actually.
beer.
I think weather and food makes a very big difference as you get older. I mean, aside from the obvious facts of family and friends, I've always been an island person in the sense that heat always. I'm just more attracted to heat than cold or ice. And I think as we got older, just missing Malaysian food and finding out how much pleasure we get from food became quite an important thing for me. So I would say Malaysia for now.
Okay, following up that question, between being a neuroscientist and a lecturer, which one do you find a lot more cooler and bring you more joy?
Okay, I kind of want to know who asked that question.
Oh, they're all anonymous.
I would say cool. I kind of think being a neuroscientist or a psychologist or any other scientist is really not mutually exclusive to being a lecturer, because if you're a researcher stuck in a lab and you're not in touch with reality and, as you said, current affairs, your research is not going to get out there. Your part of being an academic is teaching, doing your research, and of course if you're a clinician, being also in touch with patients. All three of these avenues need one another. They keep each other relevant. So I don't think that one is cooler than the other or that they are mutually exclusive.
Between stats and social psychology, which do you prefer?
Oh, I mean, it depends on what context you're asking me in. Honestly, I'm a bit of a nerd in that I live and breathe social psychology unconsciously. So when I'm reading in the news or on Twitter, my brain is constantly applying social psych theories to what I'm reading, which makes me a very weird and very boring person. And in that sense, obviously, social psych is a lot closer and dearer to me. But that's because it's one of those theories or one of those fields that I personally think underlie a lot of what we know about human beings. So it's very hard to get away from once it's already so salient. Statistics. I like the utility of statistics. I like what it can show. I like data when it's weird, when you have to kind of think about why is the pattern like this and not like what we think. And I like what numbers can reflect about patterns or trends. So I like being able to understand statistics. I don't like statistics in the sense that if you give me a lot of numbers or you plunk a statistics book in front of me, I'm going to be the happiest person in the world. No. Far from it. I read Andy Gill because he's interesting and he makes me laugh. But so if you're asking me which I find more fun, obviously social psychology, but I also love that I have a little bit of a vocabulary in statistics that I can make sense of trends in a way that's meaningful and in a way that means that I'm not necessarily drawing false conclusions. So I'm not taking people's word for it. I'm able to look at the data and see whether the interpretation is correct. So in that sense, that's where I find statistics very valuable, and I'm really grateful that this job has given me the opportunity to actually learn it in a little bit more detail. I still don't understand a lot about statistics. I'm constantly learning. Every time somebody comes to me with a question that I haven't thought about, I'm learning something new, updating my knowledge in stats. But I'm by no means a statistician. I'm by no means an expert in statistics. If any of you were to pick up a book and actually read it, you will probably know about as much as me, or if not more. So it's about, for me, with regard to stats, it was the effort that I put into actually trying to make sense of things. But I really do find it very useful. I don't think it's the be-all and end-all of research. I think there is extreme importance to qualitative research. And I think they both need to go hand in hand if you're really going to understand trends and the context in which these trends occur. the individual experience of certain trends. So numbers alone, I don't think give us the full extent of the human experience, but qualitative research alone, individual experience alone, doesn't give us enough information to actually necessarily develop interventions that are going to be useful in a more practical way. So I think they both need to happen hand in hand. But yeah, social psych, I mean, that's where it's at for me.
Okay.
I'm such a nerd in that.
Okay, that was my question when I was taking the subject. Nobody answered it until now. Well, when I grew up in Indonesia, so Indonesia has a little bit more advanced than Malaysia in terms of the establishment of psychology as professions. So there we have, let's say if you have a degree in psychology and you are a clinical psychologist or social psychologist, you are not supposed to, this is what you can do in your practice, and these are things that you are not supposed to do because this part is not your, not your field. For example, an educational psychologist might, in Indonesia, are not supposed to deal with special kids, special needs kids, for example, because it takes different expertise. But from Malaysian perspective, from what I see, is that any psychologist, I mean, psychologists are psychologists, just we learn about everything and so on. Even though we can only tell the difference once you are in the university inside the four walls of the campus, and you can see, oh, she's a social psychologist, he's a clinical psychologist, but out there, you're a psychologist, something like that. I think only clinical psychologists that have like association, right? A formal association of clinical psychologists, but for social education, they don't. So if we talk about that, there are two sides of the coin here. The positive side first is that as an educational psychologist, you can do anything psychology in Malaysia. Because there is no rule regarding that, therefore you will not do something that breaks the rule, because there is no rule, right? Now, if we talk about more in a what can I say, in a more factual way, that what we can actually do, is that first, of course, it's research and education. Yeah, that's what my favorite part, or to be honest, the only thing I can do. The second part is, in every school in my country, they need to have one educational psychologist at least for certain numbers of students. So when the school is really big, then they have 2 or 3. So these people are not doing what the counselors do. School counselors, they have separated profession there. But here, yeah, I can be school counselor too, and in fact I did. Now, the point is that, okay, we can be a school counselor. Why? Because in educational psychology, you learn how people learn. Which means that people like Ms Elaine, for example, she developed love for statistics through her students' day, since the beginning. I developed my love for statistics because I had to teach 201. Therefore, I have to read that. Then I like it. In my undergraduate, I repeated statistic 1 4 times, right? Which means that, I learn in a different way. So it takes an educational psychology to make me learn statistics because they know how I learn, something like that. Of course, like school principals, teachers, they need educational psychology skill because they will let you know how to learn. That's it.
Okay.